Back at the Sugar Shack, we used to have Cinnamon Fridays, where I would make these exact cinnamon buns and they would fly off the shelf. We used to sell out before midday most Fridays, so I thought it's time to share it with you guys. These are soft, pillowy buns packed full of Sri Lankan cinnamon, and it's topped with this amazing cream cheese icing that just melts into it. Yum! Okay, so here's how I made these cinnamon buns, Sugar Shack style. Start off by heating some milk until it's lukewarm. Dip your finger in the milk just to check if it's not too hot, and then sprinkle in the yeast and the sugar into the milk, and then whisk this in just to combine. And then leave this in a warm place for about 20 minutes to activate the yeast. The yeast should start foaming like this. If it doesn't, that means your yeast is dead and you need to get some fresh yeast and repeat this step. It's happened to me many times. While your yeast is booming, put the flour into the bowl of your stand mixer, add in the salt and the butter, and then rub the butter into the flour using your fingertips until you get a sandy consistency. Put the dough hook attachment on and then get the flour mixing on low and then start pouring in that yeast milk mixture. Now try and do a better job than I did, because I did end up spilling a fair amount of the milk out of the bowl. Mix the milk into the flour and then let it knead on a medium speed for about 5 minutes or so. Just check on the dough. If it's not stretchy and elasticy, then it has to knead a little bit longer. If it's a little too sticky, then add maybe about a teaspoon of flour and let it knead again. Maybe about 7 to 8 minutes on the machine should do. If you're kneading this by hand, it may take 10 to 12 minutes or so. Once your dough has a nice elastic pull to it, stop the machine. Lightly flour your table and tip the dough out. Knead this by hand for about a minute or so like this until you get a nice smooth dough ball. Oil the bowl slightly and then pop the dough ball in. Cover this with some cling film and a duster and then set this aside in a warm place to rise again until it's doubled in size. This should take about 40 minutes. Once your dough has doubled in size, punch it to degas it. This is my favorite part of this whole process. Tip the dough out onto the flat table and then just knead it again just until it comes together. And then we can start rolling the dough out. Keep flouring the table as you roll the dough so that it doesn't stick to the table. But always do a light sprinkling of flour so that you don't end up adding unnecessary amounts of flour to your dough. Keep stretching and rolling out the dough until you get to about 12 inches in length and maybe about 9 inches in width. Try and get the dough as straight as possible and as even in thickness as possible. Make sure that the middle of the dough isn't thicker than the edges. That way, when you roll this up, it will be nice and even. When you've done rolling the dough, carefully lift the dough up from one side and flip it over. I do this because that way, the nice smooth side of the dough will be on the outside when you roll this up. Now apply some room temperature butter to cover the entire dough. I always use salted butter. Once the whole rectangle is covered in butter, then mix the brown sugar with lots and lots of cinnamon. Good quality Sri Lankan cinnamon. And then sprinkle the cinnamon sugar to cover the entire dough from corner to corner, nice and evenly. We are rolling this breadthwise so that you have a nice long 12-inch log of cinnamon dough. Tuck in the corner of the dough into itself and almost press it into the rest of the dough to seal it. And then we can start rolling the dough into a log. Try and roll it as tight as possible so that it doesn't open up when you're baking. Tuck the seam under the log of dough and then start to cut it up. Now I'm eyeballing it, but you can use a ruler to measure this out. Cut this up into about 10 to 12 equal sized pieces depending on how thick you want your cinnamon buns to be. Line the cinnamon buns into an oven proof dish. Cover this again with some cling film and then leave it to rise again for about 20 minutes. In the meantime, preheat the oven to 180 Celsius. When your cinnamon buns have had their final proof, beat an egg and brush a generous amount of the egg on top and on the sides of each cinnamon bun. And then pop this in the oven to bake. While your cinnamon buns are baking, make the cream cheese icing to top these with by beating together room temperature butter, cream cheese, and icing sugar with the paddle attachment on a low speed until it's mixed through and creamy. Bake the cinnamon buns for about 30 to 35 minutes until it's beautifully golden like this. Take the cinnamon buns out of the oven and then almost immediately top it with the cream cheese icing. Add a generous scoop of the cream cheese icing on top of each bun and then spread it out to cover the whole bun. This way, the icing almost melts into the bun, creating this gooey, decadent glaze. Yum! And that is how to make bakery style, specifically Sugar Shack bakery style, cinnamon buns. Give these a try at home and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye!